Perhaps the Prime Minister sees his minus 36% approval ratings and this paper is his desperate response.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With your permission, I will make a statement on the Government's White Paper on restoring control over the immigration system. 5 months ago, the figures were published that showed net migration had reached a record high of more than 900,000 under the last Conservative government, a figure that had quadrupled in the space of just 4 years. It was the consequence of specific government choices made from 2020 onwards, including introducing what was effectively a free market experiment on immigration, encouraging employers to recruit from abroad, loosening controls in different areas but without any requirement to tackle skills and labour shortages here at home. Choices which undermined the immigration system and the economy too. This government is making very different choices. We made clear at the time, just as we had set out in our manifesto, this government would restore order and control to the immigration system, bringing net migration substantially down, but also boosting skills and training here at home. The White Paper we are publishing today does exactly that, and it is built on 5 core principles. First, that net migration must come down so the system is properly managed and controlled. Second, that the immigration system must be linked to skills and training here in the UK so that no industry is allowed to rely solely on immigration to fill its skills shortages. Third, the system must be fair and effective with clearer rules in areas like respect for family life to prevent perverse outcomes that undermine public confidence. Fourth, that the rules must be respected and enforced, including tackling illegal and irregular migration and deporting foreign criminals. And finally, that the system must support integration and community cohesion, including new rules on the ability to speak English and the contribution that people can bring to the UK. Our United Kingdom is an interconnected and outward-looking nation. Our history and our geography mean that for generations, British people have travelled overseas to live and work, and people have come to the UK to study, work, invest or seek refuge. And British citizens draw on heritage from all over the world, and that has made us the country we are today. Through many years, our country has been strengthened by those who've come here to contribute, from doctors in our NHS, entrepreneurs founding some of our biggest businesses, to those who came through generations to work in jobs from coal mining to caring for our loved ones to serving in our armed forces. People often coming to do some of the most difficult jobs of all. And our trading nation, global leading universities and strong historic international connections mean migration will always be part of our country's future as well as our past. But that is exactly why immigration needs to be properly controlled and managed. And it hasn't been. Those who come to our country must abide by our laws. So we will develop new procedures to ensure the Home Office is informed of all foreign nationals convicted of offence, not just those who go to prison, so we can also revoke visas and remove other offenders in a wide range of crimes who are abusing our system. Madam Deputy Speaker, already we're reducing the number of visas being granted this year, and updated figures will be published before the end of the month. Already we're increasing returns with over 24,000 people in the first 9 months, the highest 9-month period for 8 years. The impact of the changes to skilled worker visas, care worker visas, settlements, students and English language is expected to reduce visas by a further around 100,000 a year. And in addition, the new workforce strategies, immigration skills charge, family and asylum reforms will further bring numbers down on top of that. And as the Prime Minister has said, where we need to go further to restore a sustainable system, we will. Madam Deputy Speaker, throughout our history, Britain has been strengthened by people coming to start new businesses, study at universities, contribute to our cultural and sporting excellence, and do some of the toughest jobs in our country. But to be successful, effective and fair, our immigration must be properly controlled and managed. This White Paper sets out how we will restore control, fairness and order to the system, how we will continue to bring net migration down, and how we will turn the page on the chaos and failure of the past. I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Home Secretary for advance sight of her statement, not that it was necessary given the extensive leaks and pre-briefing. Now, the Prime Minister claimed this morning that all of a sudden he wants to control immigration. I must say that came to me as something of a surprise. The Prime Minister seems to have undergone a miraculous conversion. He has apparently repudiated everything he has ever believed. Or perhaps the Prime Minister is doing what he always does, saying whatever he thinks people want to hear at any given point in time. Perhaps the Prime Minister sees his minus 36% approval ratings and this paper is his desperate response. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, we know what the Prime Minister really thinks about immigration because he has often told us. The Prime Minister once described immigration law and border control as racist. He signed a letter opposing the deportation of dangerous foreign criminals, including murderers and rapists. He pledged he would reintroduce full free movement of people, and he sermonised enthusiastically about the benefits of migration. He even said the Yarlswood Immigration Removal Centre should be closed down. Perhaps the Home Secretary can tell us if she'll be following the Prime Minister's advice on that one. So, given what the Prime Minister really thinks about immigration, it is no surprise that in 2025, this Labour government has presided over the worst start to the year in history for illegal immigrants crossing the English Channel, up 30% since the election last year, and the worst start to a year ever under this Labour government. So it's also no surprise that this plan is so weak that it barely scratches the surface. On its very first page, it seeks to create a false impression. It says visa applications, and the Home Secretary repeated this a minute ago, saying visa applications are 40% down since the election, implying that is somehow down to this government. Why are visa applications actually down by 40%? It is because of the changes made by the last government, which came into force in April 2024. And from the previous peak, net migration is already forecast to reduce by around about 500,000. And if the Home Secretary is now all of a sudden so keen on reducing migration, will she explain why she suspended the Conservative plan to increase the family visa threshold to £38,000? It was due to come into force last month. Will she tell us when that change will now be introduced? Now, the truth is, Madam Deputy Speaker, this plan is weak and it will have little impact. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I have a very simple question for the Home Secretary. Well, I'll try anyway. If she is really serious about controlling immigration, will she vote later on today for the immigration cap, and will she vote to repeal the Human Rights Act for all immigration matters?
Home Secretary.
God, Madam Deputy Speaker, I must have missed a bit of the Shadow Home Secretary's response. The bit, maybe at the beginning, when he apologised to the House and to the country for his party's policies that quadrupled net migration in the space of just 4 years. He tells us his concerns about the level of migration. It was his party that is responsible for that huge increase in net migration. And I must have missed the bit as well, where he confessed that from the point at which he became an immigration minister in 2020, when all these policies were introduced, to the point at which the Shadow Justice Secretary finished being Immigration Minister in 2023, net migration rose from 170,000 a year to 870,000 a year. But I must have missed that confession and that apology, because that is what the Shadow Home Secretary should have done. And frankly, until he admits his failure, until he apologises for the damage that the chaos that he and his party caused, frankly, no one is going to take seriously a single word he says. And he refers to visa changes that were made before the election. I would say we supported changes that were made by the Right Honourable Member for Braintree, but he had to reverse some of the changes that the Shadow Home Secretary made when he was an immigration minister. And as for caps, the White Paper provides 4 caps on low-skilled migration on the temporary shortage list. But his targets and caps are as meaningless as all the other ones that his party introduced when they were in government. Indeed, let me quote from the time of the Conservative government's reforms that caused a lot of these problems. I especially thank the Home Secretary for removing the annual limits on work visas and on international students. I lobbied for both. That was the current leader of the opposition. So the idea that this will have anything to offer is like people who burgled your house and then turn up the next day and offer to sell you a dog. If they are serious about making the changes, if they are serious about tackling small boats, frankly, they should vote for our counter-terrorism powers to tackle the smuggler gangs that repeatedly he and the other right-wing parties have voted against. That's not serious. This government is.